This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Katherine McCord for the first time. Welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I want to let people know that we're a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. You can see that icon up there. So if you use coupon code GHOST, you get 1 month free premium subscription. And this podcast is a featured podcast on that platform. You'll be able to hear the audio only version on Newsly later today. So thank you for being on the program. We're actually at episode, I believe, 943 of the Family Electric Ghost
Woo!
podcast since 2016. If we're tracking on
Nice.
Apple, so this is episode 943, and yeah, it's it's been a process.
Yeah,
So
that's
the
a lot.
topic we're going to
I'm
get
all
in
proud of
today is
like my two.
neurodiverse.
I'm sorry. I'm just laughing. I'm all proud of like my 200 episodes, and you're on 943. I love it. That's so great.
So the topic today is neurodiversity at work and life in ETC, and then we'll bring back up your link. So we want to let people know once we get this back up that for those of you on the audio podcast, you can't see the link. So we will actually say www.titanmanagementusa.com, and that will be clickable when you get the podcast on platforms once it's published. But for those who are on audio, what happens if somebody goes to your website, your titanmanagementusa.com? What do you have to offer there?
So I work and I run a people operations consulting business, and we have a very nonlinear approach. So you'll kind of just learn all about the nonlinear approach of Titan management when it comes to taking care of the humans in your place of business. Everything from the fact that we completely reinvented HR tech, all the way to diversity and inclusion, kind of a measurable approach, and then a very interesting, innovative way to approach hiring as well.
So, like you're into dynamic, neurodiverse, and physically diverse um, um, issues as an HR innovator and entrepreneur. So maybe you can talk to people, in my audience about neurodiversity. That maybe people don't know what it is. So, can you explain to the audience what neurodiversity is?
Sure. So neurodiversity is a medically visible and or diagnosable difference in how a person processes information and stimuli. So this covers everything from cerebral palsy and traumatic brain injury all the way over to ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, et cetera, et cetera. So kind of that wide spectrum, and it's come to also envelop the mental health industry as well. So and kind of the premise of the movement right now that's happening in the term is that difference is not a deficit. So yes, this person is different, but it's not in fact a defect. Now there can be disability with neurodiversity as with any other situation, but it is not the only part of the story. We're actually designed to compensate for ourselves. So where there may be a struggle with the body or mind over here, we are designed to create strengths over here. And the science backs that up. There's actually a lot of benefit to neurodiversity. It's absolutely fascinating.
I think I've also being a creative person. I'm a musician, I'm a writer, I'm a producer,
Mhm.
and what I find a lot of times is creative people, we might be in this category because we have a certain way of doing things, right? So if
Oh,
you're a
yes.
person that's a creative person, I'm a musician, right? So I get a lot of things. I can connect like sight and sound. I get a kind of feeling of synesthesia. I can
Right.
create what I call sound paintings. And I'm also an IT software designer. And
Hmm.
there's certain people that are more creative or less creative, more logical or less logical. But
Right.
the thing is, like the people who kind of my zone, the artist, we kind of have this kind of out of left field approach to things compared to somebody who's
Yeah.
more logical. But we can still get to
Right.
the same place. And sometimes we come up with ideas that are out of the box.
Hmm.
And so when
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't measure, sometimes you don't measure that well on the bell curve. Because sometimes, if
Right.
you look at like an Einstein, he's getting D's in
Yeah.
physics, but he's the most brilliant physicist ever. So sometimes the measurement for a person with a certain level of brilliance, we can't pick it up because you're trying to put
Right.
them in a box. So
Exactly.
is that kind of what you're talking about?
That's exactly it. And so the whole premise is to stop doing that. So you have companies that have even started to catch on to that. And one of the most brilliant examples is Hewlett Packard, which was founded, of course, by neurodiverse individuals, as is typical with tech and creative style companies. They decided to kind of get back to their roots and created not only a neurodiversity hiring program, but a neurodiversity cultivation program. And so what they did was they basically said, okay, come work for us and you can work however you want to, in whatever way you want to. So you had people up walking around, listening to music, working in symbiotic groups, working completely independently, cut off from all contact, sitting on yoga balls, not desk chairs, using fidget spinners and toys and games and all this kind of stuff, right? Working from beanbag chairs, whatever it was, using headphones. And what they found is that this team became 33% more productive than its counterparts, and that the happiness and the health of the team increased as well as the innovation. So it's been astronomically successful. And the companies that I've worked with to sort of help duplicate this, it works just as well. And by the way, it also works with non-neurodiverse people because when people work in a way that's healthy to them and natural to them, they're going to be more productive and they're going to be able to really open up the box, right, and let all the greatness out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a little bit of a sound problem there, but hopefully you're still here. But one of the
Yeah.
things I found with, as a software developer pre-pandemic, now I'm like in my home office. I'm in my bedroom office and I'm a musician. So I've got all my synthesizers behind me and I've got all my work stuff with me. And I use a stand-up desk and I like to kind of walk around with a Bluetooth headset and I kind of pace around. And I'm not the kind of sedentary person, but at the beginning of my career, we were kind of measured at how long we could sit in the cubicle and
Yes.
go for like hours and hours on the COBOL, because I started with COBOL and
Yeah.
we're like looking on the CRTs trying to read, and those is always impossible to, without killing your eyes. And we're sitting there and they're measuring us about like, oh, did he take a coffee break? He needs to be here for like 5 hours straight.
Like, who cares? Like, calm down.
And the thing is, like, now we work with teams all over the world. I mean, I work with guys who are in India, in Vietnam, in Canada, and Germany, with different time zones, different time, and we're all working remote for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And they used to have us on planes from Sunday to Thursday flying around, and they thought that was a badge of honor, and they found out it was very inefficient because like tons of time you couldn't find me on the plane or I'm in the Uber. And so you couldn't get to me. It is so, trying to reach me on the plane and there's like, I can't do anything. I'm on the
plane. It's true. And just, it's funny to me because I feel like the rest of the world caught up because I've been remote since 2014. And so I'm like, well, what's with the rest of you? Like acting like this is so difficult. This is just normal life, and it's obviously an easy way to work. But it's true. And people have started to realize too, that taking care of their humans actually matters. And I think it took kind of a shared trauma experience of the COVID pandemic, and not just COVID itself, but everything that came with that. And during that time and just the stress of all of that, and everybody kind of going through that together made everybody realize, oh, wait a minute, we should actually be taking care of people. Which is baffling to me that it took this long for people to catch on to this. Yeah, but somehow people have just caught on that this is their job in leadership and in HR. But it is interesting, and it's interesting to watch the world try to figure out inclusion. Which to me is the most simple concept, but people are really having to learn it, and they're having to learn how to do it. And I think the biggest lesson that people are having to learn that this is hard for any human, is to learn to break that natural ego mechanism that we all have. We're all born with it. That's actually what it's called. It's part of our brain. It's our brain's need to be correct. And that thing that makes us want to argue with anything that tells us that we're wrong, right? Or to say, no, my way is right because, right? That's what that is. And to stop that and to break it and to respond with curiosity instead, and to learn other humans and to be respectful of them, um, and to support everybody existing in a way that is natural and comfortable for them, and to acknowledge that our experience and our way of doing things is not the only way, and to truly get that. And that's tough for any human, and now we're all having to learn it together. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because in my career, when I'm a business system analyst, in my role, I'm not exactly the programmer, and I'm not exactly like somebody that doesn't know code. So
Right.
I am a translator, and I worked in Japan for 2 years, and I've learned Eastern style business philosophy from the Japanese, kind of the zero defect mentality versus an American, like accepting a certain level of defects, and a whole different mindset, like an Eastern mindset versus a Western mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And then also working with people from all over the world. And like when I was living in Tokyo, had people from Australia, Japan, Europe, US, everywhere, Russia. It was very diverse. And I
Yeah.
found in that environment, working in downtown Tokyo, I learned a lot, because it's like in that work environment, it wasn't like the same type of thing as like if I was in Connecticut, where I was
Right.
in a place where I was probably the only one that looked different in the whole room. I was around like a global workforce
Yeah.
that was very different culture, different languages, and they were working together and it worked. And
Yeah.
so, like that right there taught me that like there's a way to be thinking out of the box, and it's different than what people who never experienced that would assume. They would assume,
Right.
oh, I'm going to just force everybody to come into an American mindset. And
Right.
that wasn't
Right.
what
Yeah.
we in
Nope.
Japan, we're in Eastern market. We're in a market
Yep.
where it was a totally
Mhm.
different experience, and you couldn't just force Western ideas on that market.
Right.
It
Right.
wasn't gonna work.
Absolutely. No, it doesn't. It's a very different mindset. And I do work in Europe, and I go and speak and teach over there quite a bit, and I'm starting to expand into other countries too. And it's funny because, very much to your point, it's so different. Just the way that people process and the way that they think and handle things. And so you do have to consider the cultural state. But what's interesting to me is that no matter where you go, essentially the same problems are there. They just look different. They're just there in different ways, right? And sometimes there's slightly different
Yeah.
obstacles to fixing them, but ultimately it's the same stuff, and having to fix these holes and kind of repair it always kind of looks the same. But it is funny, and it's funny to watch all this. And one of the funniest things to me in my work, and the most interesting things, is that people feel like it's an inconvenience to include other people. And it's so
Mhm.
funny to me because, number one, okay, number one, I'm raised in the South, which I mean like the real South, not how, like, I live in Florida now. That's not really the South. We're geographically South, but it's not
Mhm.
the South. I was
Yeah.
raised in the
Not
real
like
South by
Alabama.
people. Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. It's the we were part of the, like, welcome everybody kind of South, right? And huge
Mhm.
ridiculous parties and all this kind of stuff. And so I was raised with the idea that you think of other humans and you put their needs first and you consider them in everything that you're doing. That was just what you did. It was very shocking to me to grow older and realize that other people had not been taught this. Um, then the other part that's very interesting to me is that people think that they're not designed for that. They're like, oh, that's too hard. It's too much to remember. It's too much to get right. And I'm like, okay, so everybody's in your life. You know all their names, right? Yeah. Uh-huh. You know if they have a preferred name that they like to use. Yeah. Okay. You know what they do for a living, what kind of music they like. Yeah. Yeah. You know maybe what beer they drink, what their favorite food is. You know if they have kids or not. You know maybe their spouse's name. Yeah. Yeah. I know all that. You know kind of how they dress, right? Yeah. Okay. Your brain is designed for this. Your brain
Yeah.
is designed to absorb each individual person's information.
More than any
That's what
computer.
it's there.
More than
Right.
your brain
Right.
is more powerful than any computer on the planet, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you might not realize that. It's like,
Yeah, but it's true.
you know,
And it's so funny. And you watch them go, oh my God, I can't remember all that. See,
yeah.
it's okay. Like it's okay. It can seem overwhelming if you're thinking of it like you're going to meet all the humans at once. Yes, that would be overwhelming, but nobody does that. Nobody meets all the humans they're ever going to know at once. It's trickled, right? It's a little trickle. And so
Yeah.
you learn them as you go, and then you forget the ones you haven't seen in years, and that's okay. And then you keep going on, to the other ones. And so humans are actually designed for this behavior, but then we're also strangely designed to be self-centered and to think that our experience is the experience, and so we have to
Mhm.
get over that hump a little bit.
Yeah.
And even in the workplace, focusing people on, people hate the business case for inclusion, but I'm like, okay, but it's necessary. Like I see your point, but it's necessary. And for business, it's your profits go up an average of 19%. That's per Boston Consulting Group. Your innovation goes up, your employee satisfaction goes up, your ability to hire great talent goes up. And so why wouldn't you do this? Why
Also,
why
they're
would you
forgetting, Mike,
not?
we're in a global marketplace. So if you're coming
Yes.
in, like you living in Simsbury, Connecticut, and everybody looks like they came out of Yale or came out of a 5 college system, and they all look the same, right? They all came
Yeah.
with the same frats and stuff. I went to Bowdoin, so I know about the Alpha Delta Phi's and all those guys. But it's like, okay, but what you don't understand is like, if you don't have a global mindset, if you don't have that kind of diversity, how are you going to sell outside of the
Yeah.
U.S., outside of this
Yeah.
area, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can't just have that one mindset, because that's not the way things are. The way
No.
things are, like I lived in Tokyo, like I said, for 2 years. My wife is from Barbados. I've got, she traveled all over Africa. And so, having some sense of the world is kind of where we are. Like the whole
Yeah.
world is the marketplace. And if you want to keep it into a niche, because that makes you comfortable, because you're fearful of
Yeah.
change. People are
Right.
fearful of getting out of the
Yes.
cookie cutter, that the
It's true.
industrialization created a cubicle, and everybody's going to be in that cubicle, and they all get measured on a bell curve, and everybody's supposed to be there. But the people who you really want, the guys who
Yeah.
are going to come up with, like, the Steve Jobs of the world, the
Yeah.
people who are going to come up with the new ideas, aren't necessarily the guys who want to stay in that cubicle. Aren't the
Yes,
people,
that's
not the
so
women that
true.
want to stay in that cubicle, are not didn't
Yeah.
go aren't in the same frat as you, are not in the same church as you. They might be from
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else, right?
Yes.
And you might not understand them, but you're gonna need to work with them.
Yes. Absolutely. God, I've hired people over the years that I will never understand until the day I die. Like I worked with them for years, I trained them and all this. I understood them better after a while, but I'm just kind of like, yeah, I don't get you. I don't get this thing. But I needed them, and they were great hires, and they were great because they were different and because they brought something else. And that's the thing that a lot of people miss with hiring. They keep trying to duplicate this one thing or get a whole bunch of sameness, and they think that that's going to work. No, absolutely not. I mean, look, I tell people all the time, I am awesome to work with. Like, I mean, and it's just true. I'm really, really good at what I do. But I would not want a whole team of me. Mm-mm. No,
Mhm.
not in a million years. That would be terrible. It was you want
That's the
diversity. You
point of
want
like a
different.
team, a sports team. Everybody has a different role. Like if you look at, you got the
Yeah,
quarterback, you got the linebacker.
yeah.
Everybody's got a
You can't
specific
have
role,
all Tom
right?
Brady.
And
That's not going to work.
yeah,
You can't have.
I was I was talking
Mm-mm.
to a programmer today. He was a lead programmer, and he said he always liked to bring in like 3 programmers. They
Mhm.
get 3 different points of view on a problem. So they'll have a use case, they'll even have the business case, but they're at the use case and they're at the detail. And then he's like, because I get tunnel vision and I think it should be a certain way, but I want to bring in 2 other people. Because
Yeah.
like, okay, just look at it and tell me what you think. And then
Yes.
what you see is they can try to get the convergence of all 3 ideas,
Yeah.
rather than somebody coming in saying top down, I'm the lead. Everybody's just going to do, all 3 guys are going to suddenly subvert to just them. and then you end up with
Yes.
bad code. You know?
And you do, yeah. It's very true. Real quick, I've seen it happen. And it's one of the things too that people miss on the new, because we're talking about neurodiversity today. One of the things that a lot of people miss is because that they've decided that this other person is less than. So you see that a lot. You'll see that people think people with dyslexia are dumb, or that they can't read, or that people with autism are weird, or incapable, or something like that, or somehow less intelligent, which is baffling. Then and even people with ADHD, they're like, they're just overwhelming and they're nut jobs and they can't focus on anything. I've actually heard, these are things I've heard say. This is not my opinion. These are things I've heard said about people in these groups. And because people put this less than view on people, they shut them out and they shut them down. And it's so counterproductive, because they're missing all the things that are right with that person, right? And we all have things that we're not good at, right? There are plenty of things, like I cannot sit there. I could never do code, because I would go cross-eyed, I'd get bored, and I'd start throwing stuff. I can't do it. I can't sit there and focus on that one little thing for that long. It's never going to happen. But ask me to design a product, and like the UI, UX and all that I got. I can do that. That's something I can do, and I've done it. So everybody has their strength, and everybody has what they can do. And one of my favorite neurodiversities, if not my absolute favorite, is autism, and it fascinates me. And I've had people go, well, why is that the thing that you kind of cling to? And I said, well, just the way that they work and the things that they see are not what other people see, and in such a very different way. And also, if you want somebody to be honest with you and blunt with you, get you a person on the spectrum. It'll work. That's not universal, but most of the time, that's very true. It's one of the kind of glaring characteristics. But the analytical version of how they see things is so useful and so interesting. On the flip side of that, I have the privilege of working alongside a gentleman who is dyslexic, with my work with the Octopus Movement, which is a global neurodiversity movement. I'm the president of the board, and he's the founder. And he's on the dyslexia spectrum, and he is so funny and just so creative and so nonlinear, and just sees things in this whole other creative, kind of beautiful light. And you need that. You need both, right? You've got to have, and you need all the things in between, and all the kind of different things. But I think we've crippled ourselves in humanity by labeling difference as bad. We do it with race. We do it with race, religion, age. Like, oh, you're old, you must be dumb, and, or incapable. And if you're young, you're dumb. And it's just, oh God, and we've done it with race, we've done it with gender, we've done it with everything.
Because I'm 55 now, and most people don't think I am, right? So I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Because I've run into age discrimination, where they think like, well, you can't be as up on it as some 28-year-old IT guy. But then I don't look like a 55-year-old IT guy, so I kind of think I'm that 30-year-old, so I get away with it. And then the other thing that happens, because nowadays, like a lot of times in IT, we don't even turn the video on. We just do audio only conference. And what I found, being an African American, is I used to get problems where on the phone somebody would talk to somebody, then I would fly somewhere and get there, and they'd be looking all over the place. They said, where's this guy? Because they didn't expect it would be me, because I did, my voice wasn't what they expected me to look like. And so that used to cause problems, because then suddenly they would behave in a totally different way than they were on the phone. And I'm like, okay, now I got to deal with this. Okay, great. But now, because I do a lot of stuff totally online, I don't run into that, which actually helps me. And some people might not understand that, but that's a real thing.
It's God, yes. Oh my God, yes. It's so real. And I've been asked a lot about that. Or people will say things around me, and then when I correct them, they're really surprised to hear the things that I've experienced over the years working in HR, things I've seen, the things that I've heard. And people think, yeah, I literally had somebody say in front of me not all that long ago, well, racism may be still around, but it doesn't really hurt people anymore. And I was like, okay. It was really hard not to break into a lecture at that point, right? But I just shared with this person the things that I had seen, just factually. These are the things without giving my interpretation. I just gave the stories, and they were flabbergasted, just flabbergasted. And I said, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that it's not real. I said, and this is just what I've seen. I'm not even Black. For anybody who's watching this or listening to this that can't see me, I am white. Just for the record. And it's just something, a lot of people, I don't know if it's too painful for them or they just don't want to think it. I also think that a lot of people voluntarily put themselves in a bubble. You know what I mean? Like they're like, oh, this is ugly. I don't want to think about it. And then they just don't because they don't have
I think what happens and what I've found is people is like they want to say, well, that happened like in 1865 or that happened in 1854. But they don't realize it's like, as like the kind of situation that happens to us, we get like what we call microaggressions, right? And when you're not in the main majority, you don't have to feel those microaggressions because you don't really experience them, right? So you can say, oh, just because we're not pointed out doesn't mean it didn't happen. And so this is the kind of problem that we get is we get people that at one time somebody said to me in an organization that they could have diversity of thought and they didn't need diversity. They could have a room full of people that look the same, but they could have different points of view, so they didn't need diversity of thought. And I'm the guy in the room, so I feel like that's being pointed at me. That's not somebody blatantly saying something, right? But the undercurrent.
But it is. But it is though. Like that's. Whew.
Yeah, it is. They would say, "Well, I never said anything," but you did.
Yeah. Oh no, I've is more as a woman than a person on the disability and neurodiverse spectrum. More on the woman side, I get that. I've had some nonsense, especially I've worked in some very male-centric industries before, and the personality that I have is conducive to dealing with it, but I still don't recommend it. It's still not a good, it still creates problems. It's still a backward way of being. And one of the most kind of humorous examples that I experienced, I was actually at a convention, and the person that was running this particular like powwow roundtable, whatever it is, it was before everything started, and this person is somebody who tried to get me to work with them, and we had done a few things back and forth, and really it was a man, and he really promoted himself as a supporter of women, right? He kept talking about it all the time. He constantly talked about supporting women, which, first of all, folks, if you have to constantly talk about how you support a certain group, you're not doing it. Something is askew. Let's just put that on out there. Something is already wrong. It's a red flag to everybody else. So we're sitting there talking, and he was good about having women speak for things and all this kind of thing. And then I was telling a story about a friend of mine who she can't remember people's names very well. And so because of how she networks, she would mostly see women, because in our area, it's mostly women's networks that are very popular. And so she would remember the men by calling them Mr. like Katherine McCord or whoever it is, right? Like now she knows my husband's name because we're very good friends. But at the beginning, he was Mr. Katherine, right? And so I was telling the story, and this guy goes, I would never let somebody refer to me that way. And I stopped. I said, and there it is. And he goes, there what is? I said, the misogyny. I said, there it is. I said, why is it okay? I said, you call your wife Mrs. X. I said his name, Mrs. So-and-so. I said, what's the difference? And he got just oh, I got a sideways look. And I was like, it needs to be called out though. Like these little things, it's like, okay, but why is that okay? And that's one that wasn't like horribly offensive to me in that moment, but it's just, that's how you can see it, and that's how you catch it, and that's how you kind of have to go, oh, okay, yeah, there's a problem, right? And the way that then manifests is that you're thinking that you're supporting women, but then the second that there's something real, or there really is real equality, oh no, never mind. Like, oh wait, that was too far. That was it. Time out. Yeah, never mind. And I've seen that so much in disability inclusion. I'll tell you, people are, oh, I totally support disability inclusion. Oh, wait a minute. You want to use this completely free app that's different than what we've used in the past to accommodate yourself? Nope, can't do that. Or, oh, you need camera off meetings? Yes. Oh, no, we can't do that. But we support disability inclusion. What?
Yeah, it's like my daughter, she's an art director for a group of artists that are supporting people with disabilities. And she's always pushing for like ADA compliant workspaces or events. And these people like will try to link up with her. And then she says, well, are you doing captions? Do you have remote options? Do you have options for people with physical disabilities? Do you support the people, that need these things? They're, she'll run down a list of all the ADA compliant. And they just want to link with her to say that they're doing something.
Oh, yeah.
They're not actually doing anything, any part of the ADA stuff. They're not doing it at all. They just want to surface look like they're doing it.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's like, performative nonsense. I don't want to deal with them. Yeah. It's like, no, not participating in this. Well, it's just like I've told people, I've told companies flat out no. When I dove in and I saw some of the stuff actually going on within their company, I said, if you're going to bring me on, it's going to be to change these things. Otherwise, no, I'm not participating. Don't do it to try to
window dress it and say, we had this person come in that shows that we're doing it, but then they don't change any of the foundational things.
Nothing changes. Yeah. Yeah. What was the point of this again? Why am I doing this? It really, it's kind of baffling too, that people would waste their own time and resources that way. Like, why are you going to pay somebody and waste your time? Like, why not actually listen to them and actually change? But that goes back to that ego thing, right? Like, oh, well, we must be perfect, right? We must be doing the things that everything. And I think it's laziness too, where we get complacent, like, oh, this is how I've always done my job. I have to change it now, like even ever so slightly. Oh, no, never mind. Do not want. It's so frustrating. But I will say, there's a lot of movement right now where a lot of DE&I folks are getting laid off. And there's a lot of backlash about this, about, oh, this is so terrible and all this. Oh, these companies are so awful. Well, maybe some of them, some of them, it was performative to begin with. But also, other side of that, DE&I folks, and I honestly think it comes from the standpoint of that they just really care about the work, so that's why they got into it. But a lot of the DE&I executives, not talking about like just all DE&I folks, but the DE&I executives are not doing a good job. Yeah, they're not doing a good job of making the business case for their work and showing how they're making change. They're having people come in, they're making a bunch of recommendations. Maybe they updated the website a little bit. Okay, but what did that do for the business? And what is your continued work doing for the business, right? You have to make sure that you're sure, and it's very easily done, right? Like if you're actually doing the work and actually moving it forward, it is better. Everything is going to get better. And so you can say, hiring is improved, employee satisfaction is improved, productivity has improved, so on and so forth, whatever it is. And marketing efforts, perhaps, just depending on what you were doing. So you have to remember to make that case to save your job. So I always tell D&I folks, I'm like, hey, make sure that you're showing them what you're doing and make sure that you're actually doing stuff. I think a lot of DE&I people forget to actually do stuff. Like they talk about it and they do all the education, but they don't actually do anything. I'm like, okay, make sure that you're actually changing things and making things better.
It's like a foundational thing. Like if you Like if you're a COBOL world on a
Yeah.
mainframe and you want to jump to blockchain,
Mm.
you can't just have a bunch of meetings about like blockchain as an idea. You got to
Right.
foundationally get rid of the mainframe and move to the
Mhm.
blockchain. It's a big change. It's an infrastructure,
Yes.
structural change level. If you just go
Yes.
and have a bunch of symposiums, but you don't take care of any of the foundational barriers, you don't put anything in place, you don't get operational level people doing it. You only have
Yes.
people doing it at a certain level. Well, that's not even at the worker level. How is that ever going to
No.
happen if it doesn't get off of a committee and into an actual practice where you can actually
100%.
measure it, run
Yes.
stats on it? Because I'm a guy that I build stuff, and if like
Yes.
you want to build something where data goes nowhere,
Yeah.
or you want it where it actually hits the database. And sometimes we
Yes.
build things and they say, "Oh, it doesn't really need to go anywhere. It just needs to flip the switch." It's like, but I go was
Right.
looking at something today, and like the data wasn't going anywhere. I said, "Why are we asking for it if it's not hitting the database?" You're not really doing anything. It makes it
100%.
look like you're doing something, but you're not doing it. So it's
It's
like,
like, oh, I'm
so
so
that's like
busy. I'm so busy.
you're just flipping a switch and it doesn't even
Yeah.
record what you did. So what's the
Yeah.
point of that?
100%. And it's the same thing with inclusion efforts, right? It's like, no, you have to actually do the things and actually make the changes. And it's not that hard, by the way. It's really not. A lot of it, though, that companies are scared to do is the part of letting the people go they're not in alignment with that. And a lot of
Yeah.
companies, right? And you get the like what I call the feeling souls, right? That are like, oh, but we need to work with them and we need to make them feel better and we need to help them and make them help them be a better person. And I'm like, no, that's for them and their mental health professional. That's
Yeah.
who does that work. And I will train somebody on how to do something better. And if I see willingness, I will keep working with them, right? And you can tell
Mhm.
the difference between the people who are not intentionally doing it and who are actually willing to change and do better. And, when you tell them
Mhm.
something was harmful, they're like, oh my God, I am so sorry. Okay, how can I do better? Those folks, I will work with you all day long. But the jerks, even the sneaky jerks, you know what I mean? Like there's always kind of those
Yeah.
ninja, like we were talking about earlier, the kind of ninja in the things that they just gotta say or do. Um, I call them the you people jerks, because they're those people, like they don't say anything like horrible, but they'll say the you people comments, those kind of things. And the ones that defend themselves when you call them
Oh,
out on
yeah.
harmful
Yeah.
behavior, you have to fire them. Just fire them. It's not that hard. And companies just like freak out
Yeah.
about this and they just won't do it. I'm like, no, if somebody is not ethically aligned, we're not talking about political differences. We're not talking about, a personality difference, just in general, just a,
Mhm.
like this person speaks different. No, 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 no. If they are not ethically aligned with your company, fire them. Get rid of them. Good riddance.
Well, what it seems like to me, because I mean, I went to a college that had frats and had bullies, right? And I would see the bullying behavior versus like somebody who's like, really trying to learn Socratic method and somebody who's just like bullying people and cheating and stealing people's information and not really doing the work. And what I see is like, we used to get sometimes these people who were like key person dependencies, KPDs, right? So they
Right.
knew the code and they don't
Yeah.
want to let go the keys and move to Oracle, or they don't want to move to blockchain. They want to move to the next thing. So they would keep some information away from the organization and keep it within a tightly held group of KPDs.
Mhm.
But they'd be obnoxious and bullying and be able to do it because they had
Yeah.
everybody afraid. But I was actually brought
Yeah.
in to challenge some of these people and move
Love
their
it.
tech from something that was obsolete to something more modern. And they hated
Mhm.
me, but it didn't
I bet
really
they
matter because I
did.
was a consultant and I wasn't going to stay there. And it was like my point was to solve the business problem. I was given a business
Mhm.
case, and I didn't like. And I said, when I had told one of the guys, "You are taking this code personally. This company
Yes.
owns the code. You don't own the code. Like, so if I
Right.
come to you and we need to redesign it, you can't act like you own it. You don't own it.
Nope.
Like the company owns it. it's not something you built in your own. You have your own company. Like we have to
Right.
resolve this. So you and I basically found ways to push that forward. But they want to say mean things to me, and I'm like, you say all kinds of stuff. Oh, but you're an affirmative action, whatever. So what's this? I'm a consultant. I'm coming in, and basically I'm going to replace your job with a bunch of people who
And
know
then,
how to do something
wait,
different.
I have a
So it
question
has
though.
nothing to
Why did
do with
they
that.
jump to why did they jump to affirmative action though? Like, why was that?
No, well, that's an easy thing for certain people in certain type of
Ugh.
like mindset. There's a certain
Oh
mindset
yeah.
that's the automatic. If you get challenged, that's the automatic things to challenge my qualification. So you
Oh
challenge
yeah.
my qualification. The first thing you do, you just see me, right? You don't look at my background. The fact that I was in Japan, I went to Bowdoin, you don't even know any of that. You just look at me and say, "Oh, yeah, that's that." And that shows how the level of
I
your investigation
oh yeah,
into
yeah.
who I am. But you didn't check it
I
out.
I was once told that I was only on a team because I had boobs. And I mean, literally, that's it. They're like, oh, they just felt like they needed a woman. That's why you're here. And I had not like spoken or anything yet. Like this was like right off the bat. And they thought that they were being teasing and cute and fun. And I turned to them and I said, I may have tits, but I have bigger balls than you ever will. I said, and you're about to find out. And then I showed them up in the middle of that meeting and made them look stupid. And I said, see? And then when I walked out, I looked right at them and I said, see?
People.
But but it shouldn't be that way though.
No,
But
it
also
shouldn't
like
have to do
why
that. But
no. Sorry.
well, I find that
I
like
was gonna
women
say
and people from different groups, like you're talking about the like people who have, there needs to be
hmm
diversity in the workplace for all kinds of
yes,
issues because neurodivergence, different
yes,
cultures, women,
yes. Religious
minorities, people from other
differences,
cultures, to different religions.
hmm different
You get
socioeconomic
into an organization
backgrounds.
and like suddenly the only people from this religion can be in this role. It's like, how does that make any sense?
Yeah,
You know,
no,
how does
no.
that make any sense at all? How's that got to be helping the business pace? How's that
Right.
help the
It
business pace?
doesn't.
It's like so,
No.
so you got to start challenging when things don't make sense. It's like that's not
Yeah.
logical, but you guys want to make that the
Yep.
standard.
Well,
So
it's like when people say, "Oh,
I'm
well,
totally
it's not
for it.
inclusive." People say this bit about, "Oh, it's not inclusive for me if you do this." Okay, this is always one of my favorite things to address. Is I'll say, "Okay, it's inclusion, not infliction. You don't get to tell other people how to be. You get to just be you." So, in other words, if
Mhm.
you want to be this
Yeah,
way, knock yourself out. If they want to be that way, as long as it doesn't hurt the work, great, you do you. But
mhm.
we're not going to sit there and tell each other how each other have to be. That's not it. And even down to how we communicate with one another, people will be like, oh, I don't like how this person talks. I wish they would talk this way. Okay, well, they don't. This is how they communicate. It's not
Mhm.
rude. They're not saying anything insulting to you. So just deal with it and communicate with them in a way that's effective for both of you and find a compromise. It's not hard. I tell people all the time, but some days I feel
Yeah,
like
I
I'm
mean, if you
teaching
think
kindergarten, you know?
yeah, I think the problem is like I'm a Buddhist, right? So I come into an
Mhm.
organization, right? And if somebody has this mindset that a Buddhist is going to just my existence real is a danger to their mindset or danger to
Right,
their concept. So like I
right.
can't be there because that offends them and that takes away their rights. Like, how is my practicing this
Yeah,
take away? You can do whatever you want. You can't tell me like I suddenly can't be a Buddhist to be in
yeah.
this group.
Nope,
Like, how's that make
nope,
any sense? I mean, that's
nope.
what they want to do at a certain level in
It's
certain
true.
places. I'm like
It's very
that.
true.
So how is somebody who's neurodivergent gonna get into a situation where they'll start acting like the bully in high school and saying names? I mean, it
Oh
kind of
yeah, yeah.
devolves to this very childish kind of frat boy,
It
high
does. It
schooler
does. Yeah, people
behavior,
revert
and I
and
even see
it's
it in the men's room.
mhm.
Yeah, in the men's room, I go into a men's room in a Fortune 500 company. We have a diversity meeting. Go into the men's rooms, and people are saying like all these epithets in the restroom after the meeting. really loud,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay. So see, that shows is like these guys aren't going to really be able to learn.
No, no. And
Because
those are the people you
that's
got
my
to
first
fire.
instinct.
Those are the
I was like,
jerks.
I
Just
can
fire
understand
them.
there's some, yeah, yeah, that's what you're talking about. Like there's certain people, they get presented something, and then what do they show back? Intransigence. You know, there's like they're not going to
Yes.
move, and they're proud
Yeah.
of it. They're proud of it. They're not going to move.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah. A
like,
lot of
okay,
jerks are very proud of themselves. It's true. A lot of people are like, woo, I'm a jerk. Yay for me. No, no, that's not it. And I have a firm belief that jerks are only jerks because they're allowed to be. And so when we stand up
hmm
as a company or a country or a group or whatever in the world it is, and we say, no, this is not how this is going to go down. We reject this behavior. Here's the consequence for it. That's it. And it makes me laugh too, because I've seen this hilarious argument time and again of freedom of speech. I should be able to say whatever I want. Yeah. Okay. First of all, that only applies to the government. Okay. That doesn't protect you from anyone else anywhere, only the government.
yeah,
Second of all, is that it's freedom from speech, not freedom from consequence. You can still, it's just like when your toddler
yeah, it's
talks
a
back to
consequence.
you. Yeah. It's like when your toddler talks back to you and you put them in the corner. It's they had the freedom to say it, and then they got punished, right? It's the same thing. You're not absolved of
Yeah, you can walk in.
consequences to your action.
I mean, you got the freedom of speech to walk in a bank and then suddenly yell like, "I would like all the money," and then suddenly the police come in and they come after you and they say, "Why was this a joke?" Yeah, but
Yeah.
look at where you are, right?
Yeah, but
Because
pay
there's a whole
attention.
thing like, yeah, it's like there's fighting words, there's yelling,
Yes.
fire in the theater.
Yes.
There's certain restrictions on it, right? And people think
Yes.
what they don't understand. You have a right to say it, but there's a consequence. You allow fire in the theater, you're going to jail. You do a
Yeah.
fighting word in a school or a college or a place,
And
and it's a
away you go.
workplace, and
Yeah.
it's shown, you're going. You had a
Yep.
right to do it, but there's a consequence to what you do. And they say they don't understand because they didn't take civics and they didn't take any classes. They don't look it
I
up,
guess.
and then they just think you can say whatever.
Yeah.
They
Like,
tell
no.
you somebody's under protection order, and then you keep on threatening them. You don't have the
Yeah.
right to keep on doing that. If there's a protection
No.
order on that person, like you're gonna go to jail.
No. Consequences.
You know?
Yeah, I saw a comedian the other night, like literally like 2 nights ago, and he was talking about, he goes, look here, all you First Amendment and Second Amendment defenders, he goes, I don't want to hear it anymore. He goes, unless you are defending every single amendment out there with equal enthusiasm, I don't want to hear it. He's like, just cut it out. Just no more just spouting off the ones that benefit you and your particular jerkholeness. Just stop. And I kind of, it is very much that way, right? Like back to the self-centeredness being the problem, right? Cut it out. It's the world does not revolve around you. And at work, that's especially true. And when I see leaders do it, it really sets me off because their entire job is taking care of their humans. That's it.
Mhm.
That's your job. That's it. That beginning, end, that's your job. And then all the things that go with taking care of the humans. And so if your whole mindset isn't let me help you work in a way that's natural and healthy and productive, you've already failed. You're done.
Yeah.
You're done. And if you're excluding somebody on your team, you have failed. You are done. You should not be in your line of work. Goodbye to you. Now, if it's on accident, and again, if somebody tells you and then you fix it, fine. That's not what I'm talking about. We all make mistakes, and no matter how hard you try, at some point you're going to boof it, right? Like it's okay. That's all right.
Yeah.
But the people that stick to their ego and won't change and won't evolve and won't move forward, they don't need to be in leadership. The people that are in HR who don't understand what it means to go into something and be impartial and don't understand what it means to prioritize humans need to be out of their line of work. I straight up looked at an organization a couple of years and said, you need to fire this HR manager. I said, she doesn't understand what impartiality is. I said, she plays favoritism. She needs to be fired. She's bad at her job. And they said, oh, but she's been here for however many years, and she's been doing it for 10 years. I said, well, that's real cute. She's still bad at it. She needs to go.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
like the
just
time
because.
doesn't equal the quality, but that some people are quantitative, right? Rather than
Yes.
qualitative is like 20
Hmm.
years in a position where they caused all kinds of problems, maybe lawsuits, all kinds of issues. Whoa, I like them. Okay, well, you like them. That's subjective, right?
Okay.
But
Yeah.
look at all the damage they caused, right?
Yeah.
And just because they were
Yeah.
there for 20 years, what does that mean? It's like we could have bad code in the system for 20 years. We're going to keep it,
Yes.
or
I
we're gonna
just.
move it.
Yeah, I know it baffles me. I'm like, why are we talking? And it's the same thing in hiring. Like people will obsess over years of experience. Like it doesn't matter. And the first time I ever say that to people, their faces are just like in shock. What do you mean? What do you mean years of experience don't matter? Oh my gosh, how could you say that? And I look at them and I say, well, what if they're in it for 20 years and they stink? Well, we don't want them. Aha. So it's not years of experience, it's expertise and the quality of their work that matter.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah. I'm like, yeah, see, that's the thing. Is I've known, for instance, recruiting is my background, agency style recruiting. I still do some of that to this day, just to kind of stay sharp. And I will tell people, I was really good at that 6 months in. And I've known other recruiters that just get it, right? They're just good. I've known people that have done it for
Mhm.
a year and they're better at 20-year veterans. And then I've known people that did it for a year and they were just never going to get it. And the same thing at the 10 and 20-year
Mhm.
marks. I've known people that were great and I've known people that really should have left the industry years before that. It's the same thing in every industry. Years of experience is irrelevant. It's where your skill level is, what your abilities are, those, and how much of an expert you've become. I know so many people, and I love to use HR as an example because that's my field, but I know so many people in the HR field that have not bothered to learn any real employment law. They don't understand ADA. And I'm like, okay, how are you even in this field? It's just like when I was recruiting in the tech world at one point, and I was recruiting for a CTO, and I spoke to a guy who, and this was 2 years ago, okay, who the most recent language he bothered to learn was C++. And he'd been a CTO, and I was going,
Oh, that's pretty behind the
oh.
times.
Like, you haven't learned anything new in like a decade, so I'm
You're
gonna have to say, yeah, I'm gonna have to say no to this. Thank you so very
you
much.
can find some hackers that are better than you. You can find some
Yeah, I
hackers.
was like,
You can find some
that is
hacker
not
kids. You can
acceptable.
find some 22-year-old kids that know more than him.
Yeah,
Because
that was my
the
thing. I
thing
was
about
like,
it is like
he what
in
happened was he
IT,
got
you
in a
can get
company
people.
that used that. He got in a company that used that. That's all that they used. They stopped their expanding there, and he stayed their CTO this entire time, and then never bothered to self-educate
Oh,
past that. So he was stunted. And so it's not a
yeah, I've heard
100%
something.
his fault, but also like if you're in tech, stay on top of things. But sometimes it's just matter of dumb luck. He just landed in a position where he just kind of ended up stagnant, or opposite of luck, I guess. But then, so again, back to the experience. It's about experience. It's about talent. And again, back to the neurodiversity thing, right? The talent that's in that pool is just crazy. It's just crazy. I always tell you, like, whatever interesting thing it is that you're looking for, just dive into neurodiversity and it will be there. Just like, and I've had people like, oh yeah, well, what about this? And I'll tell them exactly, like, okay, go look here. And they're like, what? And they go and look, and sure enough, oh my God, there's this whole pool of humans and they have exactly what I needed. I'm like, I told you. I told you, like, go
There's
find the
a problem
humans,
because a lot of
get
times,
creative.
yeah, they're looking at resumes. Somebody's like, "Oh, I've been a CTO for 10 years,"
Yeah.
and if you're just looking at years versus somebody that made come from a startup, maybe it's got 3
Yes.
years, but they've been at
Yeah.
like 3 different startups, and each one has gone boom, 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 and
Yep.
they just go and they pick the guy for 10 years, but he's like a one-trick pony. He only had one thing.
Yeah.
This other guy
Yeah.
is
That's
like
it.
where things are. But you
Yep.
go and say, "Well, he was only got 3 years," so you're like they're making the wrong assumptions and
Yeah.
making, not picking people based on the interview, and maybe he feels comfortable to you, right? Versus
Yes.
somebody who's neurodivergent, and then you having a problem because you're like, oh, they might not have that kind of flash. They're not like selling themselves like a salesperson.
Right.
Like the
Oh,
problem with I
that's the
thought
oh,
executives, they like that kind of sales
you
pitch. They
hit
like
on it.
what the sales director
Yes. So
marketing people talk. And that's not
that's
everybody that you need is going to talk
no,
like that.
no. And we've got to get away from this weird mentality. You hit the nail on the head, like you just landed right on it. This is one of the biggest things that I preach. It's something that the companies that have listened to me on this, it's made their hiring program astronomically better. It's like, stop expecting candidates to be good at interviewing. Cut it out. It doesn't matter. Who cares if they're good at interviewing? That has nothing to do with anything they're going to do the rest of the time that they work for you. You know, like
Yeah.
maybe sales is maybe the one exception. Sales and of course recruiters, those are the only two
Yeah.
real exceptions to that. Everything else outside of that, it does not matter at all how they interview. Some of the worst interviews I've ever had have been some of the best hires that I've ever made, and in all different kinds of positions. That's true. In fact, the absolute worst interview I ever had, aside from people who did something like, weird, like real bad weird, or something like that, or something unethical. That aside, the absolute worst quality interview I ever had ended up being one of my top performers in a customer service team that I built out for a client of mine, and got promoted twice within 1 year. Horrible interview. Horrible. Like, just flopped entirely. But they saw past it.
Yeah,
They saw the real
it's
potential. Yeah.
It's kind of like if you just look at one thing, if you just look at the SAT versus reading somebody's
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, if they wrote like a blue book, right, and you
Yes.
actually
Yeah.
go and interview them, and you don't just go by the scores, but you actually check like all the things that they did, like
Right.
they're in the student council, and they're in the art group, and they do music, and
Mm-hmm.
you look at the whole individual, and you don't
Yep.
just measure one aspect of it. You're more likely to actually start to find the brilliant points in their capability. But if you just
Yeah.
focus on that personality thing that you want them to be like, that
Yes.
set you at ease, well, a lot of times the best people might not set you at ease because they're kind of going to
Mm-hmm.
challenge you, right? Or
Yep.
they're going to not fit your mind, what picture of what you thought they should be. You're not
Right.
letting them be who they are, because people just want
100%.
to clone what they think is a successful pattern. In music,
Mm-hmm.
what we look at a lot of times is I want somebody to show me what they're the most scared of showing me.
Yeah.
Show me the demo that you don't think I want to hear. And
Yep.
what I find is that actually shows me more of who they are rather than trying to clone Taylor Swift or clone Beyonce or clone. I want to hear
Right.
who they are. And
Right.
then I actually find something that's not like anybody else, which is actually
Mm-hmm.
what you want if because the
Yes.
market's flooded with the same thing. So I want to
Oh
get
yeah.
something that's different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Show me
you
the
only get the
unique you.
difference if you're willing to get past people's fear. Yeah, show
Yes.
the unique you
Absolutely.
and we'll make that the best version of you and expand on that. And people who allow people to
100%.
be the best version of themselves, then you're going to get a
Mm-hmm.
win-win.
Yeah. And that's how you interview, and that's how you lead. Is you set people up for success. That is our job as leaders, HR professionals. Whichever one you fall into, it is our job to help people, to set people up for success, whether it's in the interview, whether it's in their job, to grow. That's our job. That's our lot in life, is to set them up for success and to uplift them and to help them stand out. And if you can do that, that then the rest of it comes naturally. The building, the psychological safety, the inclusion, the increased productivity, the leadership development, all these things, all of those things come naturally when your whole goal is just taking care of your humans and putting them first.
Yeah, because you gotta, you guys like take care of that, that elemental seed of human spark, because like what we find is being a creative person, I've always felt like if you create this environment where I feel like I don't have any limitations in terms of I'm able to kind of express myself fully. But if you put me in that box, you say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. Well, how am I going to innovate? You already tell me I can't do like all these things. So we're
Right.
like, you're just going to get the same thing you always get. You're going to get the same
Yes.
thing you've always gotten, but somehow you think you're going to get a different result.
Yeah, it doesn't work. That's the definition of insanity. Einstein's definition of insanity. That was it right there.
Yeah, how's that going to happen? But thank you for being on the podcast. It always goes by so fast. I want to let people know
It
that
does.
www.titanmanagementusa.com, that will be fully clickable. Again, you can tell the audience what happens if they click on that when you go to that URL.
Yeah, come learn more about me as a person, and also my brand, my company, all of our nonlinear people work that we do. And if you want me to come in and teach, educate, speak, help build out a hiring program, whatever it is you need, we are always here to help you out.
I think that's great. I think our audience, we've got a lot of people who are entrepreneurs. They've got businesses. We've talked to a lot of people who are kind of self-motivated, and they probably are starting to get employees and starting to need to understand what's the best HR strategy. Because
Oh
even if
yeah.
you're a creative person, you start to build like a workforce that kind of push your product,
Yeah.
which you make
And
merch and
startups and
t-shirts.
growth stage, that's my
Yeah, there's all
jam.
kinds of
That's
things.
my heart and soul is that
Yeah.
market. So yeah, always reach out to me. That is, I love nothing more than helping entrepreneurs grow. I just helped one of my clients double in size so far this year, and it's been an absolute blast.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you.
I'd love to have guests on the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast because I think they bring the audience a lot of interesting things that you've never heard before or hadn't thought about. And that's the point of the show is we want to have like a very expansive conversation that's inclusive of many points of view. And so it's in line with what we're trying to do. So thank you for being on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.